What I really would like to be is a musician. I think musicians are magicians.
Já jsem dostala dopis od našeho takového prvního vlastně zákazníka a ten tam píše, že posílá do Prahy mladého, talentovaného, jednoho z nejlepších režisérů.
Mladý?
A tenkrát si byl mladý, ano. A já jsem dostala vztek takovej, že proč by sem posílali z Ameriky někoho, kdo teda mě bude říkat, jak se dělají filmy, protože já už tenkrát v té době byla už asi 30 let málem ve filmu. A takže jsem vůbec ani na letiště nešla, když jim přijela, když potom, to bylo nějak sobota, nebo ty si přijel nějak v sobota, pátek, sobota. A to bylo v říjnu. A vím, že byla mlha, vypadalo to tak jako podzimně. A tenkrát v pondělí jsem přišla do práce a ptala jsem se té mojí kolegyně, jak vypadá. Říkala, no takovej dlouhej brejlatej. Pak přišel Jean a já se na něj vzpomínám, takovej byl jako celý nervózní, skutečně z mého pohledu byl teda veliký tenkrát a fakt je brejlatej a měl takový sportovní svetr a to bylo první, co mě upoutalo. A já jsem říkala, tak on asi nebude tak špatný, on to bude určitě sportovec, to bude něco. A to byl největší můj vlastně takový problém v mém životě, protože on vůbec není sportovec a já jsem si potom...
Neumím tancovat, neumím zpívat, neumím plavat,
no a já jsem si potom ověřila, že vlastně kam až daleko může jít tolerance vůči druhé osobě, kterou milujete.
I've written a book. I don't really like to tell this story over and over again. I wrote a book called For the Love of Prague because I got tired of telling the same story over and over again. Because people ask me, why in the hell did you decide to come to Prague? And I have to tell people, look, I didn't decide to come to Prague. I was dragged here, kicking and screaming by a maniac New York producer. Otherwise, it would never in a million years have occurred to me to come here. He was a strange guy, but he had wonderful taste. He just took those books to Prague and he gave them to Zdenka. You know, he had gone there first in 1958. And he gave them to Zdenka and he said, here, animate them. So, you know, they didn't know they just put the books on their table and they turned the pages and started to animate these books. They were extremely skillful. They looked exactly like the books. They knew how to paint and draw and copy the style exactly, but they didn't understand American pace. They didn't understand the pizzazz that you had to have for an American audience. And this was his problem. The films were beautiful, but they needed to be vastly re-edited and reworked in many ways to make them saleable in America.
Tenkrát se tady nepracovalo s dialogem a ani tolik jako s ruchama a lip-sync, že jo, to se tady vůbec ještě nedělalo. Já jsem říkala, ježiš, to někdo zase přijde a bude mi do toho kecat.
It was really strange. I didn't know who this guy was. He was really bothering me. He kept coming to the studio saying he wanted me to help him make his cartoons, and I was, of course, interested in anything that I could bring into my own shop, but he kept insisting they had to be made in his facilities. And so, you know, I said, look, I'm not going to go over on the east side of Manhattan to make films. I'm going to do it. He says, well, no. He said, it's a little farther away than these. My studio was on the west side, incidentally. I was on West 61st Street. I didn't want to go anywhere else. And so he said, well, look, he said, the fact is that my studio is in Prague. And my mind suddenly shifted back to my army days. I was having my basic training in a real hellhole of a place called Muskogee, Oklahoma. It was a place which was pretty horrible, but that's where I was training in the Army during the World War II. And any chance we got on weekends when we had a weekend pass, we would liberate a Jeep, as they used to say, and we would drive 50 miles to the southwest, look it up on the map, to Prague, Oklahoma. This was nothing more than a crossroad town, but it had a great pub there, and we used to go there and drink beer on the weekends in Prague, Oklahoma. Bill Snyder was talking about going to Prague. I said, you must be kidding. There can't possibly be an animation studio in Prague, Oklahoma. Then he thought I was a nut. He says, no, 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 no. This is in Prague, Czechoslovakia. So then I stopped dead and I said, wait a minute. Isn't that one of those communist countries? I never heard of Prague. I didn't know much about Czechoslovakia. And he says, well, look, don't get the wrong idea. It has nothing to do with communism. These are great people here. It's a great animation studio. And he was, every time he came back, the story got more and more glorious. And he says, and also, he says, I'll tell you one thing. There's a little girl in that studio who you are going to love. And I thought, well, this guy was really full of this guy's BS, and I kept throwing him out. On one of these last visits, my telephone was ringing, and my secretary says there's somebody on the line I have to talk to. So while I'm talking on the telephone, he's looking at this storyboard of Monroe on the wall. And so then came his one last desperate offer. He turned around, took a big puff on his illegal Cuban cigar, and he says, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. He says, if you go with me just for 10 days to see the operation, I will finance this film. He says, this looks like something really funny. As we touched down on the patched Prague airport runway with a fateful bounce, I looked down at my white knuckles and once again asked myself, Gene, what in the hell are you doing here? Before I could come up with an answer, the plane had taxied up to the cheerless wooden terminal building, no more than a shed then, crowned, so help me, with a neon hammer and sickle, glowing grotesquely through the mounting fog. The plane's door creaked open and a rickety metal stairway was wheeled up. A military-looking officer with a red star on his cap appeared, and I descended into the gloom. He reached out his hand. Your passport, please. My passport? My God, my brand new United States of America Virgin passport. The first and only one I ever had. Bought just a week before in New York. Here I was in the godless bowels of Iron Curtain land, at the mercy of an inscrutable language and a hostile ideology, and already I was having my passport confiscated. What do I do now? As visions of doom loomed before me, I noticed the dim figure of a small woman emerging from the fog, loping across the tarmac toward the plane. She arrived out of breath, and with a broad smile, one hand extended, she said, Mr. Deitch, she panted, if you thought you were going to be taken from the airport directly to the jail, that's not true. And so I guess I may have been the only person I can ever think of who flew directly from New York to Prague for the first visit to Europe. And you were then going into the Middle Ages. You were going into the past. The people's clothing was from the early 30s. Everything was really retro. October then, in that particular year, 1959, was pretty gloomy, and it was very foggy and very gloomy, but there was this smell of coal in the air. On my first trip here, they showed me a whole bunch of their films, and they showed me their equipment. And I look at the equipment, and I looked at the films, and I figured, these guys must have talent, because they had the most primitive, crudest type of animation cameras. I mean, they moved drawings around on a pantograph. They had what I would call a yardstick that they slid the pans on. They didn't even have movable pan bars or movable compound or any of the things we thought were essential. They had 2 pegs instead of 3 pegs. Impossible to find the center of your field. They had the camera field. The biggest field was number 1 and the smallest field was number 15. Actually the opposite direction that we were used to from the Oxbury system. I fought it for a long time. I tried every which way to get them to update things, but then I finally said, look, If that's the way they want to do it, okay.
up.
I don't want to know anything about it. Just get it onto the screen, however you do it. So here's this little figure coming into the room, carrying a huge pile of boxes of drawings, wearing this white smock. She'd come into the room, set the boxes down on top of a cabinet, look at us for a minute, then leave. Then she'd come back again, always on the edge. And when Vasek Bejic and I started to have some kind of a confrontation, I can't even remember what it was, she suddenly came down, picked up a chair and sat down and started talking a mile a minute, jako kulomet, like a machine gun, to this. And I started to think, my gosh, maybe there's something to this socialism after all, if even an ordinary messenger girl can sit down and speak to the project. And I had no idea who she was, you know. I didn't know that Zdenka was the chief of production at all. I thought that it was Kopechna who was the chief, because she was the one who was guiding me and talking to me. Nobody told me what they were doing or who they were or anything like that, what their job function was.
Tenkrát ve studiu nikdo neuměl anglicky, jenom já, pár takových těch chatrných slovíček, že jo, proto jsem taky z Žíny, když přijel asi 2 týdny nemluvila, protože jsem se nechtěla schodit. No ale fakt je, že to byl ten důvod, že vlastně, když tenkrát přišel pan Snyder do studia, tak mě ředitel tenkrát říkal, Zdenko, vy musíte s tím Snydem projít a ukázat mu všechno, protože nikdo jiný nebyl.
And when Snyder came back into the office of Musnik, and he said, okay, he said, I'm prepared to make a contract with you to give you 6 films, guaranteed 6 films a year, but he said there's only one condition. That girl must be the production manager. So finally, after she heard me and saw me, and then they also saw a couple of my films, and they saw my storyboard on the wall, and she began to think, well, maybe this guy knows something after all. He wasn't so bad. And she came up to me and she said, if you like, I'll go with you shopping on Saturday. That was her first word she ever spoke to me. And so then I said, great, you know. And so we went out shopping on Saturday. And the funny thing is, we're walking down Václavský náměstí, and we came to a scale where you put a coin in, and Zdenka said, I'd like to weigh you. She was sizing me up, you know. So she said she took my coat. I had to take my shoes off. I'm standing there in Václavský náměstí on this scale, put in the crown and something. She got my weight. She was satisfied. So, I mean, that's how it all began, in just this crazy way. And as we're going down, and she's taking in various shops, and I'm trying to be a gentleman, she says, don't open doors for me, I'm a sportswoman. Zdenka, you know, she said, we have in our country a habit of how to drink. And, you know, we held up a drink and she held her arm around like this, with a drink. And so there was nothing to do except kiss. And, you know, that was it, magic moment. But
and I will tell you, this is our thing. We have a chain. I gave Jean the chain.
Shushki, but we both.
And this is a
where
chain.
Is it? Ah, here it is. Okay.
And it's written, I love you.
Yeah, one in Czech and one in English. You have to blow
And
on
I
it.
have it.
To blow on
Jean
it.
had
It's
it, I
animation. Okay, I'll show you this in a close-up sometime. But if you blow on this, it makes them... There it goes. In one it says Milujte, and the other one it says I love you. And which by a miracle, Zdenka found this in someplace, I don't know, and gave me one. And by another miracle, I found one that was in English. And
so this is...
Yeah.
This
So
is...
we never take them off, no. Many of my American friends and colleagues, perhaps even my family, might have wondered if I might be, at the very least, a communist sympathizer, while the local authorities and certain people around us might well have thought that I was a CIA agent. The hardest thing for people to believe was the simple but unusual truth, which was that I was just here to make children films. Of course, with people being widely exposed to James Bond movies, all manner of spy films and books, and the conspiracy theories surrounding the JFK assassination, it was difficult to get across my situation without actually increasing suspicion through endless explanation. I understood the suspicions. After all, being a children's film animator would seem to be the perfect cover, an innocent-sounding occupation, masking a devilishly clever undercover operation. As it occurred to me later, I did come to feel that my very presence here could convey a message to the people who were around me. But in absolute truth, I was just an animation film director, and my coming here had nothing whatever to do with politics or the Cold War. My one and only undercover operation was my love affair with Zdenka. But whether I liked it or not, we were both at the mercy of political and international events.
Ty máš pořád pocit, že tě nikdo nesledoval. To víš, že jsi byl sledovaný.
Well, no, I didn't say
to
I didn't
víš,
have that.
to víš, že
I didn't
totiž
know it.
vždycky ve Vrátnici, kde jsme byli ještě na burze, tak tam vždycky přišel jednou za 2 týdny tajný, že ty o tom nevíš, protože jsem tě nechtěla ty by si se hned vystrašil. Tyhle ty věci jsem ti neříkala, ale byly faktický. A nezapomeň, že jelikož ty jsi tady byl takový newcomer, nováček a jsi takový crazy trošku, tak fakt je, že člověk musí s tebou jednat jako tak, že jsi velice naivní, nebo byl si naivní a do dneška jsi naivní. A fakt je, že je nutný, aby si věděl, že člověk tě musel trošku
tak jako... Já bych radši být naivní než cynický. Češi jsou cynický.
Ale
někdo musí být naivní.
Ale fakt je, že musíš počítat s tím, že tenkrát v té době si byl trošku posunován, protože já jsem věděla, o co jde, kdežto ty ne. Ty jsi pořád byl jako ve hvězdách.
Ano, to bylo lepší pro mě.
Ale jenom ti chci jako, dneska je to jedno.
Je to pravda, ty si vždycky říká, co mám dělat a co nemám dělat a komu mám mluvit a komu nemůžu mluvit a tak dále. No ale my jsme přežili takhle.
No to víš, ano.
But the interesting thing is that neither the Czechs nor the Americans nor the CIA or anybody else called me in because I figured they knew everything I was doing and they didn't have to talk to me.
Žít je čistá duše. A skutečně to na první pohled, to poznáte v tom člověku, co je. To jako, on přišel vlastně do prostředí stejného, jako mezi kolegy animátory, on ani nemluvil česky, pochopitelně, ale jako měl hned takový ten pocit, že vlastně stačí vzít tužku do ruky, papír a nakreslit to a tím jako řekl všechno.
This was one of those life crossroads that many people come up against in which you know that whatever you do, it's going to be bad for somebody. And the problem was that you either take advantage of the possibility to change your life, or you let it go by. And one way or another, you're going to be miserable. I know that if I would have opted out of this, that I would be kicking myself ever since in my life. I don't know what life would have been for me then, but on the other hand, by doing it, I know that it was very difficult for my kids, and it was very difficult for my former wife. You can't avoid this problem, that somebody is going to get hurt. But in life, maybe not everybody gets it, but sometimes in life a door opens and you can see things in a completely different way, and you see there's a possibility for another way of life. We never knew that, if this didn't work out, or if the communists didn't like what I was doing and threw me out of the country, I often thought, Jesus, I'm going to end up sleeping in a cardboard box in New York. Because I gave up everything. I didn't know anything. Well, the thing is, I had already made it in America in that sense, and I had done it And it was true. It was a lifetime decision. I know that if I stayed there, I probably would have been in on Pixar. I would have been in on all kinds of these big developments because those are the things that interested me. But I had really special interest. I really developed a love for the short form. I may be the only well-known or well enough known animation director who has never wanted to do a feature. I like doing short films because even if you have a disaster, it's a short disaster and it's only taken 6 months out of your life. And I made the decision, I just made the decision that fame and glory was not that important to me. I thought too that I was just going to be vegetating here and doing little things and nobody would ever see me again. But look, there's a problem. I fell in love. I fell in love with a great woman, and I saw a whole different viewpoint on life. I didn't want to be rich and famous. I just wanted to enjoy being here in this wonderful place and working with these wonderful people, and I was happy to do these little children's films. I was totally dependent on my producer to be able to get the work established and establish the idea that I needed to be here. It was very uncertain. Many people around Zdenka thought she was really making a big mistake or taking a terrible chance of ruining her life, and her former husband told her that too. She said, you marry him, he's going to go away, or you'll never see him again. If you divorce me or something, and you'll never see him again, your life will be ruined. And that was a big threat hanging over her. But look, well, we believed in each other. And somehow, I don't think Zdenka will say to you that she ever believed that I wasn't going to come back. Look, I left the country one day before our marriage. Because Zdenka, I asked her what she would like to have for flowers, She wanted to have mimosa for the wedding. No such thing here. So I said, I'll fly to Zurich and bring back the mimosa the next day. So I actually flew to Zurich the day before our wedding. Lots of people could have thought anything they wanted. That, I was going to run out, the wedding was set, all those people were coming, Jean doesn't show up. I mean, that's what they could have thought. I was the only person in the East Bloc, I heard later, that had what was called in Czech a neomezený zpětný visum, unlimited return visa. I would get this for a period of 6 months at a time. I didn't have to say anything to anybody. I just jumped into my car. I woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning, usually on a shopping day, and sometimes I had to go once a week. I get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, get dressed, jump in my car, go to Germany, shop, buy everything. I had a big shopping list. A lot of it was for other people. I'd come back in time for dinner, and people thought that was absolutely insane. No, it was so difficult for people to travel. Somebody could get out and go to Germany and come back the same day. It was unbelievable. And I was, I never took that for granted. I can tell you, I can describe to you exactly how it was on the border. And I think I crossed the communist border of this country more than any other living person. And when that iron gate swung open and let me out, I always took that as a fantastic miracle. So people ask me, well, what's the secret? Why did they let you do this? Why did I have these privileges? And I think it all comes down to just a simple thing, money. They needed hard currency. And what I was doing was bringing hard currency into the country. It wasn't all that much, but it was more than they were getting from a lot of other places.
Once we went to, I think, Norway or Sweden, and we went to Berlin, East Berlin, and we drive there very late. I think it was maybe 9 o'clock in the evening. It was dark, and I said, look, this is a new hotel, Gina, we will go there and we sleep there. And I have a normal visa through East Germany to Sweden, because we have to, next day we plan to go with Strajek to Sweden. Of course, Denmark. Yeah. But Jean has only transit visa.
Through East Germany.
Yeah. And so we came to this hotel, Berolina, we showed Doklady, and this guy...
So he said, he looked at my passport and he said, sir, you cannot sleep in the German Democratic Republic. That's the way he put it. You cannot sleep in the German... And I was so exhausted, I said, look, I'm going to sleep right here on your desk. He says, you cannot sleep in the German Democratic Republic. I couldn't figure out what he's talking about.
Yes.
What do you mean I can't sleep? I'm passing out right now. He said, she can sleep here, but you cannot sleep here. He never quite pointed out to me that the reason for it was that I had a transit visa, which did not allow me have pobit. Once you sleep someplace, that's another visa. So
he told you have to
he
go
said,
to
you go to West Berlin. You
yes.
go to West Berlin. And
Sleep
he's
there.
yeah, and sleep there. I said, I go to West Berlin, I can't get back in. I've got I have to go back to Prague to get a new visa.
Yeah.
So he said, you cannot sleep in the German Democratic Republic. And we come to an impasse, and I said, look, there's got to be a way. What can we do? And I'm really exhausted. So
And
he said, well,
those days
around the
there were-
corner,
in
and
Berlin
it was
there was
Saturday
almost
night.
nobody
on
was
the
there.
street
Only
except
you saw
soldiers with
soldiers,
guns.
yeah.
Right in Berlin on Saturday night, dead. So he said, we
was
go
something-
around the corner to the police
It was
station.
in
It was in 64. No, but we were not. We were married in November in 64. This was in the summer. We were not married. Okay, so we go around to this police station. The guy takes my passport, his passport, disappears in the back room, and he comes out and he said, "You say," he speaks some English. He said, "You say that you're married. Well, how come your name is Deitch and her name is Naimanova?" And even in my horrible tiredness and stupor, I must say I came up with the greatest genius line in my entire life. And I said, "Comrade, we live in a socialist country where a woman is married, she has the right to keep her own name." The guy had no answer for that. He froze, he went back in his room, came out with the stamped passport.
And so she can
And we
sleep-
slept in the German Democratic Republic. Nudnik was my creation in my most satisfying films I did with Nudnik. Nudnik was really part of me because I'm also a neshika. I'm also clumsy and bump into things and drop things and so on. And Nudnik's inspiration came out of my own experience. I can tell you, the kind of Nudnik gags. When I was a creative director of Terry Tunes, of course, I hardly ever wear a necktie or any formal coats or suits or anything, but we were having some important visitors coming to the studio, and so I came to work with a necktie, and I was showing our something to these visitors on a moviola, and of course in America we have these vertical moviolas. And I was leaning over the moviola to show something. My necktie actually got caught in the sprocket holes and jerked me forward. If I didn't stop it instantly, I would have lost all my teeth. And when I used to go around every morning to make the rounds, I had 6 directors working under me because I was a creative director of the whole studio, and I couldn't personally direct every film. I was a supervising director. So I'd go around as soon as I went into the little office of one of the animators, the animator would immediately, automatically move his coffee cup somewhere else, because I would come in and I'm start waving my arms around and telling them my ideas and jokes and everything, and I would invariably knock their coffee over.
I think that you did it.
Yeah, I did it several times, so they knew that would happen, so they always put their coffee out of the way. And so when I started to get the chance to make my own character, I was starting to think of a guy like that who everything went wrong, and every kind of thing happened. Nudnik was a character who could take an ordinary can opener, open up the top of the can like this, and all the food would drop out of the bottom. Everything went wrong.
Jak je úžasně jako opravdu senzační v té práci jeho, tak on je pro život je takový, jako bych řekla, nepraktický. Jo. To, já nevím, jestli se vám říkala takový krásný, co se nám stalo Já jsem, když to bylo takhle jako z kraje, tak jsem chtěla mu udělat takovou tu apple pie, ten koláč takový, jo. A tak jsem to načinčala všechno. A jak se bouchlo s troubou, už to bylo skoro pečený, jak se bouchlo s troubou, tak z té trouby ze zhora spadlo takový černý jako smetí, jen takový tenoučky, jo. A já jsem to chtěla sfouknout a G říká, ne, počkej. Vzal vysavač, udělal to a teď to udělal. A koláč úplně všechno vysál, zůstal tam akorát ten okraj, jo. A pak jsme celou asi hodinu v koupelně vyčistili tu hadici a to jsme foukali a prostě proplachovali ty jabka z toho, jo.
I had a toy movie projector.
Ano, to právě ty jsi...
I had a toy printing press.
Takhle reprezentuješ úplně teda a tu Ameriku. Mít každý nový gadget, kdežto...
Your own son is like that too.
No teď on taky je americký občan, takže co se divíš, to je přesně to samý, kdežto já jsem taková...
I had the first tape recorder, I had a disc recorder.
No vidíš, já mám ještě starý typewriter a ten mě vyhovuje a můžu na to psát dopisy. Tak to je ten rozdíl. Vidíš, a já napíšu dopis, ty napíšeš dopis a když dostane někdo dopis ode mě, tak je to psaný někdy i rukou. A je to, no právě, no to je to důležitý. Ty potom se splesteš, zmačkneš špatný knoflík a ono ti to zmizí, no. Kdežto já to vytáhnu papír ze stroje, je to, no. To jsou ty rozdíly.
I know, a manual typewriter doesn't crash unless you drop it on the floor.
He had one of his big friends read it to him.
It's from local draft board 92, and it says your friends and neighbors send you greetings.
I want to welcome you men of the Army. You meet us halfway, we'll meet you halfway. This is a time of world struggle. I'll explain the issues. Our side is in favor of God, the other side isn't. Any questions?
I'm only four. I'm only four.
It is the official policy of the Army not to draft men of 4. Ergo, you cannot be 4. Ergo, you only think you're 4. Go on sick call.
Well, Monroe was really the first film we finished here.
And do you know that what happened, that we finish a film and we have really very short time to finishing.
Yeah.
And in laboratory,
Deadline.
at Barrandov, they vykoupali, jak se to říká.
Let me tell you, in order to qualify for the Oscar, the film had to be shown in a Los Angeles area theater before December 31st of that year.
A my jsme, no a když to vykoupali, tak to bylo prostě strašný, jo. A já jsem tam šla a doslova jsem brečela a pak šli taková fáma, že to je první produkční, kterou viděli, že brečí nad zvyčajným filmem. Ale já jsem viděla, prostě nám šlo po všechno, že jo, tenkrát. A takže jsme asi 2 noci a 1 den jsme natáčeli pořád znova ten celý film. A potom já jsem to vyhrábala z laboratoří. A Jean ještě ten den, co dostali jsme tu práci, tak ještě odletěl do New Yorku a ještě to stihnul. 6 hodin rozdíl, že jo. Tam myslím,
got there exactly in the nick of time and won the Oscar.
A new bunch of men.
See that man? That's a soldier. That's what we're going to train you to be. We're going to separate the men from the boys.
And Monroe began to cry.
Hey, stop that crying, soldier.
The sergeant looked embarrassed.
Stop that crying, soldier. Stop that crying, soldier. Stop that crying, soldier.
Then out came the general.
Soldiers don't cry. Only little boys cry. Are you a soldier or a little teensy-weensy crying baby boy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Obviously, then, you're nothing but a little baby boy. Obviously.
Simple logic. And once they'd said it, Monroe began to look different to them.
I rule that this is a little boy. Of course. It's logical. A little boy.
Sign here, just a simple release.
Cuban Missile Crisis was right away in 61, I think, or 62, right? And I was, didn't really speak Czech, and I could see something really terrifying was going on, and all these people were marching down the streets with big banners, Americans go home and everything. So I figured, I think the best thing I better do is get over to the American Embassy and get inside there, because I didn't have any idea what was going to happen. And I was frightened, and I go there. I got up to Zhisha where the American Embassy was, and there was a big round group of people surrounding the whole doorway with these big signs shouting against America. And of course, the big door of the embassy was slammed shut. So, I went. I tried to insinuate myself, and I got to the door and knocked on the door, and I knocked on the door, and all these people are shouting, Americans, go home, and they're all surrounding me. And I'm knocking on the door naturally doesn't open. And so then I sneak back out again, and I was, just lucky to get back in my apartment.
You were furious.
I was furious. I said, the next morning I called the embassy and said, I want to speak to the consul. And I went into the American consul office and said, look, I'm an American citizen. I felt I was in danger yesterday. You wouldn't let me into the embassy. I didn't get any protection. And he got back to me and says, Mr. Deitch, if you choose to come here to live, that's your business and your risk. They were hostile to me because they assumed I must be a communist, that I've come here, and they were more suspicious of me, I think, than the Czechs were. Everyone was a shopping scout. I saw garlic at Mustek, someone would announce. Your best friends would tip you off. For most people, the main daily activity was looking for something to buy. Working hours were conveniently arranged from 6 a.m. to 3 p.m., which allowed time to shop before the stores closed at 6 p.m. During these hours, the babichki, the grandmothers, were on constant vigil. Retired grannies patrolled the streets carrying their ubiquitous net shopping bags, ever on the alert for lines of people. Whenever they saw a queue, it was a sure sign that something good and rare was on sale. There was a story about such a babichka who saw a line of excited shoppers and immediately joined them. One by one, the line slowly advanced, and each lucky customer got a little box. What could it be? The granny's excitement mounted as she neared the counter. At last, she got her little box. Her curiosity impelled her to open it immediately, and she pulled out a long strip of material. What is it? She asked the clerk in puzzlement. Well, it's shit now, lady, said the clerk dryly, but it was color film.
Když jsem Jim přijel, tak vlastně měl jedinej malý magnetofon a to byl vlastně stereofoní. A to bylo úžasné. První stereomagnetofon tady jako v republice. A to bylo úžasné. My jsme tenkrát dělali ze série Toma and Jerryho jsme dělali Carmen Getic. Byla to parodie na Carmen. A měli jsme tam asi 50 členů orchestra. A Jim seděl mimo tu halu, protože tam zvukový mistr, že to měl takový starý křáp tam. A měli asi jenom tenkrát asi 8 klik nebo kolik.
They had a sovětský pult there with huge knobs on it. That was at
Gene si sednul, vlastně jak se zavírají dveře do haly, že jo, tak si tam před to sedmi, dali mu stoleček, sluchátka, to vypadalo jak pilot Čkalov, jo, měl takovýhle sluchátka.
The engineers all said,
a všichni říkali, no co se
we got a symphony orchestra here and you're recording it on this little teeny box.
No a Gene tam seděl a nahrál to a když byla potom pauza, tak si šli poslechnout a všichni muzikanti úplně byli z toho celý piv.
There are all kinds of little things, ordinary things ended up always in these Tom and Jerry cartoons, So I had things like mouth harps going boing, 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 boing.
A nebo s balónem, jako s takovým s tím balónkem pro děti, tam se dá dělat spoustu věcí.
Wet your finger and rub on a balloon, you get wonderful sound. At that time, the Tom and Jerry cartoons cost $40,000 a piece. Today it sounds like nothing, but we got $20,000. to do it.
It was still good.
And it was good for us, but it had never been able to do it in America. Tom and Jerry was not my kind of thing. You know, I'm an UPA man. I was doing things very strong graphically. I considered Tom and Jerry to be vulgar and full of násilí.
Ty zapomínáš anglicky.
Full of drastic action and brutality and so on. I didn't really like it, but then as we got into it, I realized this was something we could learn a lot from. So we put our hearts and soul in it, and from a standing start, without any experience of doing Tom and Jerry's, including myself, and the people here had never even seen one, we managed to turn out 12 or 13 Tom and Jerry's, and we worked very hard on the timing and the action, the animation, and we studied all the little grimaces that they did in the takes, the double takes. You know, with Tom and Jerry, it's always a double take, something they never did before. How to learn how to make that particular quick action, as they said, and takeoffs where they go. Nowadays, I couldn't imagine myself sitting in a studio and doing the same thing over and over again, having to animate Tom and Jerry my whole life. It was interesting for us to do 12 of them. We had the opportunity to do, starting in 1962, but that was enough. We were working for a Connecticut company called Weston Woods, part of the Scholastic Company, and their main work is adapting children's picture books to film. And every children's picture book has a different look, a different kind of design, a different kind of story, and this is what makes our life interesting.
An animated motion picture of this book faced enormous difficulties, technical as well as philosophical. Adapting Wild Things into a movie was probably my most hazardous undertaking for Weston Woods, the Mount Everest of children's books. We had to do it because it was there. And once started, there was no hedging. I had to find my own way to where the wild things are. A new technique developed especially for this film by one of the studio artists, Rudolf Holland, made it possible to use the book's original rendering style directly onto our animation cells. It was basically painting of a white latex base in the shape of each animating figure. When this dried, a paper-like surface resulted, onto which we could paint and draw with pencil, fine pen lines, and even watercolor. It took 1.5 years just to render the hundreds of moving character drawings and backgrounds for this film.
They roared their terrible roars and gnashed their terrible teeth and rolled their terrible eyes and showed their terrible claws.
Wild Things has become really an icon, and Maurice has done a lot of great things, and he himself can never do anything that gets the renown of that. Maybe I'll never do anything as successful as Monroe. You're lucky if you get one thing, or Tom Terrific. One thing that hits, then you really have a hard time.
I think that in those days, if we have giants, in Oscar, I'm sure that we will get Oscar.
The Giants we know would have won the Oscar,
Definitely.
but unfortunately it was impossible to
time
enter.
because you have to be in certain time on certain place.
After all, at that time when it came out, we're talking now about 1969. After it would have been at that or at 68. There was tremendous worldwide sympathy for Czechoslovakia, and that plays a big role in the Oscars.
My giant is calling me. Coming, Sydney! Oh, by the way, Frank, you stay! Melvin! You got to get a bigger club! Okay, Melvin. Blast it! 3, 2, 1. Now George and Sidney both stink.
People interpreted it as having a meaning that really wasn't there. My inspiration for the film was the never-ending conflict between Israel and the Palestinians. And I saw them as really two basically ugly forces fighting each other endlessly, revenge, attack and revenge, attack and revenge, attack and revenge, which never got anywhere and still doesn't get anywhere, really. But because it came out during the invasion, people saw it as something quite differently. And therefore, as soon as the communists took over again here, they banned the film immediately. And they never told me why they banned it. But Zdenka heard why they banned it, and they said that the film was objectivist. Now, I never heard that word before in my life. I know what objective means. Objective, means that you're looking at both sides equally. But objectivist, to their point of view, meant that it didn't show. In the communist times, here was the basic rule. There were good guys and bad guys, and the good guys were in the socialist camp. They were good, and the ones who were in the capitalist camp were bad. And they couldn't understand a film. They couldn't understand a film in which both sides were bad, and both sides were unable to get together. Therefore, it was objectivist, and it did not follow the socialist idea.
We'll use your bone as fertilizer! I will prefer not to watch when your smelly body is smashed. Right? Yes, George? How will we get along without our protectors?
It was right up till the month of the revolution here, The Berlin Wall came down, and there were people who told me, it'll never happen here, they're too strong. Most Czechs I knew didn't believe it until practically after it happened. They just didn't believe it was possible. Okay, so here we are on Tržiště Street, which means Market Street, and this is the American Embassy right here. The funny thing, in the communist days, the doors were open. You could walk into the embassy, you could walk up to the Gloriette and see the view, and you had no problem. Now they've got all kinds of security. We've got policemen here. Have to watch because you never know. There's all kinds of terrorists and things around. Everybody now is afraid. It's really a funny thing. In that degree, there was less fear from the American viewpoint as there is now. As I say, in the next edition of my book is going to have the subtitle From the Tragedy of Communism to the Comedy of Capitalism. Because, things are just as crazy now. But naturally, it's not, it can't be compared with that. After all, we have such incredible government crises here. We have all kinds of scandals. You have sex scandals and payoff scandals and all those things. We have all the evils of capitalism. There isn't going to be any system in the world when you have to deal with human beings that's going to be perfect. But whenever we complain about how terrible things are, how expensive it's getting and whatever, we still have to say, yeah, but look at what we've got. We've got everything we ever dreamed of. We've got the hypermarkets, the multiplex kinos. We've got IMAX theater. We got everything there is you can get here. We've got the internet. We've got everybody from the age of 6 got a mobile telephone, iPods, everything. This is what we wanted. This is what people wanted, and though you have to cope with it. And there's a stability here that you don't have in America. And of course, there's a history. Every time I get out from where we're living now and I look up at the castle and all these things, if I go back to Hollywood, where I was raised as a kid, I can't find anything I can remember. You know, any building that's over than 50 years old in Hollywood is torn down. Something new. It's all artificial. I read in the newspaper, I think in the Prague Post, that some guy who was here right after the revolution, of course, it took several years before there was the McDonald's here, and he said, I was here before McDonald's. So I said, man, what is this guy talking about? I was here before there was anything. So I said, I've got to write the book because I definitely was and am, especially now, the oldest American here. And as we're shooting this today, I'm here over 46 years. I like Prague. I like Europeans. I like the attitude towards life here. There's a reality that doesn't exist in America. I think I wrote in the book that when we first got our chalupa, and that we've already had that for 35 years at least. We've had our chalupa, and so I was still fairly young. We went out there and we're starting to do our puttering up, which never stops at a chalupa. And some guy, a local, came up to me and introduced himself. You know, I see you're a new guy here, and he said, well, I hope you like it. He says, by the way, have you had your first heart attack yet? And I said, what? He said, well, I've had 3. It was Prague, Czech people, face realities. It's a normal thing. After all, people who drink lots of beer, smoke endless cigarettes, eat pork all the time, they have heart attacks early. Thank goodness I'm lucky. I have low blood pressure. I'd never have smoked in my life, and I'm happy that I'm still here. But none of us want to face the reality of death and dying or anything like that. But when you're in Europe, in America especially, it doesn't exist. You go to American cemetery, it's done like it's some kind of a garden, and there are waterfalls and fountains and music is playing, and it's a resting place. They never use the word death. In America, you don't die, you pass away.
Kdyby Jean odešel dřív, tak by to bylo hrozně smutný, to bych asi možná, nevím, možná, že bych třeba na půl roku se odjela třeba za synem a vnoučatama a pak bych třeba půl roku zase byla tady a já o tom zatím nepřemýšlím, i když vím, že teda jsme léty dost daleko k tomu, že by se mohlo něco stát, ale zatím si to vůbec nepřipouštíme s Jeanem. To je lepší, když to přijde, tak to přijde, pak to člověk musí řešit, ale nemá cenu se dopředu uvažovat, co by bylo, kdyby bylo.
Prague is I think the most beautiful city in the world, and I'm happy to be here. So I will definitely stay here, I think, as long as I live. Unless somebody makes me the offer I can't refuse again. Come to Hollywood and I'll make you a billionaire. Yeah, sure. At my age, it's not likely to happen. Okay. I think that's enough, isn't it? Super, huh? Mm-hmm. Oh, yes, you know. This is a long, slow fade out.
How do you know?
Da, 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 da. Roll the credits. Roll the credits now. Make sure they spell my name right. And Zdenka, they say Zdenka, Stenka, Stinka, Denenka, every kind of spelling you can think of. And for me, it's Deutsch, Deutsch, Dusch, Dietrich. Yeah, well, those are the hazards.
Yeah.
When I fall in love, it will be forever, or I'll never fall in love. In a restless world like this is, love is ended before it's begun, and too many moonlight kisses seem to cool in the warmth of the sun. When I give my heart, it will be completely, or I'll never give my heart. And the moment I can feel that you feel that way too is when I fall in love